virtually. And I hope one day both of you will visit us at Don Bosco College of Engineering, Goa, India.
That would be wonderful. We look forward to that. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Are we ready to get started? Would you like to start now? Or should we give students a while to join the meeting?
Yeah, I think we're a little early.
Yeah, another 5 minutes.
Super, perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, again, thank you for having us. We're delighted to be here. I think this is one of many points of engagement and collaboration. So, we're delighted that you had us here today. So thank you for having us. We'll start in just a few minutes.
Yes.
I will orient myself to Google Meet as well. So Ken, are you just going to share your entire screen? Is that not the way to do it, or can you pick a window?
I will share my window, probably.
Pick a window. Okay.
If that works.
Have a look at that. Okay, that allows you to pick an app. I got it.
Right. I'll pick my PowerPoint slides. So
yes,
if that works.
Me as well. I'll do the same. I'll defect all.
Professor Testani, how is Dr. Hari?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. He's doing well. He is in the last 6 months or so, maybe a little longer. He has probably lost 30 or 40 pounds.
Oh, is it?
So he's been doing quite a bit of dieting and exercise. And wow, he looks like, I first met Dean Srihari as a student probably over 30 years ago. Now he's thinner than when I first met him.
Okay.
He's just amazing. It's inspiring, but I personally would love to be able to get to where he is. It's a lot of hard work and commitment, but that's the dean.
We are eagerly waiting for him to come down so that we can sign the MOA.
Yes, he is very much looking forward to that. And he's already thinking, we may be able to travel in the fall. I'm not, we have to see how things go, obviously. I think we're starting to see, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're starting to see our fourth spike here in the U.S.
Sad to say, that is correct. With the vaccine, states started opening up indoor dining, bars and churches and such. And yes, we saw about a 20% rise in cases over the last week. So
wow, 20%. Wow.
Yeah, substantial. So the public health workers are in a bit of a panic right now.
The situation is same over here too. In India too, that's the same problem.
Is it?
Cases are rising here too.
You've started to open things up again.
But now
it's a very
to go for a closure again. Let's see how things work out.
Yes, we can keep our fingers crossed. I mean, the variants make me very nervous, but I guess I always err on the side of caution. But the variances are the wild card, right? This virus is insidious enough, right, to where it spreads across asymptomatic people, which is frightening in and of itself. And now we've got variants on top of that. So this is, I don't know, Ken, you couldn't engineer a better virus, I don't think.
Yeah, I think partly we've just forgotten, how devastating viruses like measles were, and still kills many hundreds of thousands each year around the world. Most people have been exposed to it now, and so it doesn't spread like it used to. But many of these things we take for granted were really very dangerous viruses. So I'd rather be living now with COVID than living 100 years ago with diphtheria and cholera and measles and smallpox and polio. So
it's a good perspective.
Yeah. How our ancestors survived is just, I teach health systems, and we go through kind of the history of the development of the healthcare system, and it's just staggering. What we didn't know, what we didn't have. So we'll be okay.
And what we thought we knew in some cases, right?
We
were just wrong on.
Yeah, well, we're wrong. We're no doubt wrong on this virus as well, but
Go through cycles of learning, right? You got to
Yes,
go
it
through
is.
cycles of learning.
Yes, it is.
Professor Michael and Professor Kenneth, we have with us our Director of Don Bosco College of Engineering, Father Kenneth.
Good evening to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good evening. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Okay. Should we get rolling?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Vila, would you like to say a few words to start the session? And otherwise, I'm happy to start with this short presentation and introduction of our featured speaker. All right, well, thank you all for attending. This is Michael Tostani from Binghamton University. I'm delighted to be here along with my colleague, Dr. Kenneth McLeod. So we're really pleased to be able to put on this webinar for you. I think you'll really enjoy it. I know I do personally, and I'm quite sure you'll take away a lot from Dr. McLeod's talk. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a few minutes, of course, to welcome you all. Thank you for being here. This is an important collaboration that we have with Don Bosco College of Engineering. So we're very glad to be providing this webinar today. And I'm happy to just talk to you a little bit. I'm just going to spend a few minutes and overview our Watson College for you. We'd love to see the students of Don Bosco at the Watson College someday. You know, we hope we're coming out of COVID, and we're actually planning to be on campus, right, in a in-person teaching environment in the fall semester. So that's an exciting prospect. So if I could just take a few moments to describe Watson College. We're a first-class higher education institution. We're committed to providing a quality education in engineering and applied science, and we have a very, very strong international perspective. And I'm glad for that, because it's that perspective that brings us all together today. So again, welcome. You know, in terms of where Binghamton University is at, you'll hear New York and you'll think of New York City. We're actually in upstate New York. New York is located up here on the USA map, up here in what we call the Northeast. So we're kind of located near these New England states, right, of Massachusetts, rather, Vermont, Maine. So it really is a nice location. We're in a nice part of the country and a beautiful part of the state. We're not too big, we're not too small. So we think we're right size. And in driving distance of big cities, if you want that experience, like New York City, Niagara Falls, you can go into Canada if you'd like. That's where our key speaker emanates from. So it's really a wonderful location.
Michael, your slides are not advancing.
Oh goodness! Oh, why is that? What slide are you seeing, Ken?
Just the entry slide. So maybe if you go to slideshow mode.
Okay, I thought. Oh goodness! Let me stop sharing and try it again. Stop sharing and try it again. I thought I was in slideshow, so my apologies.
Sir, I would like to introduce everyone to this webinar first.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. A very good evening to all. My name is Ronald Chris Mendes, and I welcome all of you for this webinar on creating customer value by Dr. Kenneth McLeod. An innovative product adds more variety to the existing market, working on the needs of your potential customers and using their feedback can improve and help you to convince the buyers that you offer more value than the competition around. The idea is to embrace the needs of the masses and to work on fulfilling them. I shall now introduce the speaker for the day. Dr. Kenneth McLeod is currently a professor from the Department of Systems Science and Industrial Engineering in Binghamton University. He is also the director of the Clinical Sciences and Engineering Research Lab there. Dr. McLeod completed his Bachelor of Sciences degree in Kettering University and went ahead to receive his MS and PhD in bioengineering from MIT. Following a postdoctoral fellowship at Tufts University, he joined the facility at Stony Brook University, where he taught musculoskeletal physiology as well as co-directing the musculoskeletal research laboratory in the Department of Orthopedics. In 2002, Dr. McLeod was recruited to Binghamton University to be the founding chair of the new Department of Bioengineering, which developed the first undergraduate bioengineering program in the nation, focusing on biological systems such as complex systems. In 2014, Dr. McLeod transitioned to the role of entrepreneur in, in residence at Binghamton University, having been a founder in more than a dozen startup ventures. He currently serves as CSO of Bioelectronics Corp and CEO of Sonostics. He continues to teach at Binghamton University as a professor and has research interests in a broad spectrum of healthcare-related challenges revolving around human physiology and electromagnetic interactions. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Michael, would you like to make a few final comments, or should I start?
Why don't you just start, Ken? Thanks for asking. Yeah,
Okay.
We'll get into it. Thank you.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be speaking with you. I have never had the opportunity to travel to India. It's something I'm looking forward to at some point in the future when things open up again. But as we were talking about earlier, you are probably glad you are there and not here, because we are expecting 6 inches of snow tonight. As a Canadian, that doesn't bother me, but a lot of my coworkers are not going to be very happy. And keeping people happy, of course, is the focus of our talk today. We're going to be talking about creating customer value, and this is really the core of innovation. And so I just want to go through a few, principal concepts in the realm of creating customer value. First, let me just ask: did my slide advance? Is everybody see?
It's still on the first slide, Ken, and it's it's not in the slideshow mode.
It is not. Okay.
Perhaps do the screen share versus the app share. It's just a thought.
Okay.
Oh, now it advanced. It just advanced.
All right.
Went over. Yes.
And then advanced again.
And advanced again. Yes. So it is
Okay.
now advancing. So we're good.
I will leave it in this mode then, I guess.
Yes, I think so. Let's go for it.
All right. So 4 principal concepts I want to cover this evening. First, what do we mean when we say customer value? We just touched on that a couple of minutes ago, a little bit of introduction. I'll expand on that. I want to introduce the concepts of fluency and disfluency, which are very important in creating customer values. Then I want to talk about really the difference. Sometimes young people confuse invention with innovation. And in the world of entrepreneurship, we're much more focused on innovation and creating innovations which turn out to be combinations of existing technologies. And then finally, who do we want to innovate for? Selecting that initial target market. And so I want to talk about change as opportunity, which is how you identify who are you actually designing for, who you innovating for. Along the way, I'll talk about a few texts, readings, books that I often use in class. My students have found them to be very useful. I find them very readable books. And if you want to go deeper into these 4 topics, these are references that I think you'll find useful over time. Most of them are classics. Maybe all of them are classics at this point. So we'll be doing that as well. Okay, so let's get started here. And feel free if you have questions along the way to interrupt and ask the question. If I'm not being clear, I'm happy with that. So pretend you're in class, and if you have a question, just raise your hand and ask your question, or just turn on your microphone and ask your question. Okay, so as pointed out in my introduction, I tend to work in the world of healthcare, And so perhaps not surprisingly, when I'm teaching customer value, I use kind of healthcare metaphors. And so you want to think of your customers, your potential customers, as being in pain. All right, they're not in pain because they're sick, unless of course you're working in the world of healthcare, and that could actually be the case. But in most cases, people are not working in the world of healthcare, and it's metaphorical pain. Okay, they're not happy about something in their life. Nonetheless, when people are in pain, they treat their pain in some way. They're doing something. Often they're simply ignoring their pain. Or there's some other intervention that they are using. Often that treatment, we'll call it, is not working. But nonetheless, once people start doing something for a pain, they get stuck into that behavior very quickly. All right. And so your challenge as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, is you're going to have to make people change what they're doing. Okay. And people don't like to change their behaviors. So in some way, you have to provide your potential customer with a different way to treat their pain, not simply a better way. Better doesn't cut it for most people. How do you provide them with a different way to treat their pain? Okay. And this is where the concept of customer value comes in. Okay. What do we mean by different? What we mean is a unique experience, a surprising experience, something that people are so enamored by, they go, I'm willing to give this new approach a try. Okay. Sometimes we call this unique experience making meaning. And of course, alternatively, what we often call this is creating customer value. All right. I personally like the term making meaning for people, but the more traditional phrase is in fact creating customer value. So we want to make meaning for people. We want to create customer value, but the whole point is to get them to change. They're doing something currently. We want them to do something else. How do we convince them to do something else? Okay, so if we're going to create a unique experience, we kind of have to understand the user experience. What do we mean by user experience? And there are a number of factors that go into creating a user experience. And of course, we want to create a unique user experience. For example, the usefulness of a product is part of the user experience. Okay, it's technical performance. Okay, what does it do? Okay, technically. How usable is it? You know, is it easy to use? Is it convenient to use? Is it quick to use? Those kind of factors are we call usability factors. There's desirability factors that can be very important. Okay, how easy is it to learn this new intervention? Is there good customer support? What do your friends and family think about this new intervention? Okay, this new user experience. You think, well, who cares? You know, it's the customer that's going to be using it. But in fact, in the world of the customer experience, what their friends and family think about what they're doing is huge. Okay, and you're probably aware of this. You probably, you know, started doing something and your friends or family criticized it and you quit doing it. Okay, because the support of our friends and family is very, very important. So we often forget about that. I have a good friend who owns a car dealership. And he goes, when people buy a car, that's usually the most important thing. You don't have to sell the individual on the car. You have to give them the arguments for their friends and family when they're saying, why did you buy a white car? You know, white car, they're just going to get dirty, you know, and then you're constantly washing it. And you got to say, well, you know, white cars are the very safest cars. Fewer white cars get in accidents than any other color car. So everybody needs an argument for their friends and family of why you're doing something. So desirability is a huge issue. Accessibility, of course, is very important. The cost of something, the size of something, the weight of something. Delivery speed, of course, Amazon, you know, has made their whole market based on next day delivery, or now they're doing same day delivery in urban areas. And in my world of healthcare, credibility is huge. Usually more important, usefulness. Obviously, does it work? But you don't know it works in the world of healthcare. I'm sick, you want me to use this new thing, or I'm injured, whatever the case may be. You want me to use this new thing. Why should I believe that it's going to work? And of course, what we do in the world of healthcare is we provide all sorts of clinical study data. Look at this study we've done, and look at how people did. Look how this study we did, and look how people performed. So the credibility of a product in the world of healthcare is huge, much more important usually than usability, desirability, accessibility. So, well, usefulness and credibility dominate. So these are representative characteristics of the user experience. And this is what you're focused on, okay? You want to take one or more, but generally we focus on one of these usability factors or the user experience factors, and we want to make it much better. We want to make it unique. Okay, we don't want to improve the experience over what people currently have. We want to make it hugely different. Okay, and the rule of thumb is to shoot for 10x better. Okay, 10x better is not better. Okay, something is 10x better is transformative. I mean, think about yourself. Okay, you all probably run occasionally. You know how fast you can run. You can run probably a few kilometers an hour. What if I told you, maybe you're a very good runner, you can run 10 kilometers an hour. What if I told you I could make you run 100 kilometers an hour? Okay, you're not thinking to yourself, oh boy, that's better. There's no way 100 kilometers per hour is better. That's transformative. I mean, that's fundamentally, you can't even imagine that. And you certainly don't believe me if I say I can do that for you. Okay, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for 10x better, because people no longer say that's better. They go, oh my goodness, that would be so amazing. And if you can convince people that they're going to experience a 10x improvement, that alone is often enough to convince many people to try your new product service, no matter how much they like what they currently have. Something that's 10x better, everybody goes, that would be so amazing. All right, so that's something we shoot for, okay? But even 10x better is not necessarily going to convince your potential customers, all right? People, again, are really hesitant to change behaviors, okay? Think about yourself, think about all your friends and family. Okay, you've been doing the same thing for years and years. You get up in the morning, and you probably eat the same breakfast almost every morning. Maybe there's 2 or 3 different things you have for breakfast. There are not 100 different things you have for breakfast. We get stuck into behaviors. And if I wanted you, to switch to a new type of breakfast, okay, how am I going to do that? All right, I can say this breakfast is 10 times more nutritious, and you're going to go, nah, I've eaten this breakfast all my life. My parents eat this breakfast. My grandparents ate this breakfast. All my friends eat this breakfast. I am not going to switch. Why is that? Okay, and this has been under study for a long time. And Zhejiang, back in the 60s, started his career out and focused on this exact question. Why do people consistently select and use the same things over and over again? The same words, the same shapes, the same characters, the same foods, okay, you name it, the same music, okay? They consistently do the things that they have done throughout most of their lives. That's it. It's not here. So here's a case. You can offer them something that's 10 times better. They can even agree with you. Yes, that would be 10 times better, but I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. Okay. And Zhejiang coined the term, very important phrase, mere exposure effect. Okay. That people are not rational. People are rationalizing. Okay. And when they experience the same thing over and over again, people become familiar with it. And people love the familiar. Okay. People around the world much prefer the familiar, no matter how good the alternatives might be. We just love familiarity. This probably makes sense going back, to our ancestors 300,000 years ago. Okay, I ate that yesterday and I wasn't poisoned and I'm alive today, so I'm going to eat it again today. If I try something new, it could be poisonous. I could be dead tomorrow. All right, so we probably developed this focus on the familiar for very good reason. Familiar people probably aren't going to kill you. Familiar animals are probably not going to eat you for lunch. Okay, it's the unfamiliar to be afraid of. Okay, so people around the world love the familiar. So no matter how good your innovation, if people don't see it as familiar, they are going to be very hesitant to change. Okay, so what is familiar? Okay, and it's different. Here's a very famous American painter, a very famous American painting called Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth. You show this to an American and they just love it. Okay, my guess is most, if any of you over in India have never seen this painting, and you go, yeah, okay, it's a girl in a field. But to an American, it's not a girl in the field. It's representative of rural America. Okay, you can see the old farmhouse there. You can see the field of grain. Okay, you can see this young lady dressed in a classic American style. In fact, it's much more moving than that. Okay, because this is painted in the 1940s, and in the 1940s, polio was sweeping the country, and polio paralyzes you. And this young lady, Christina, was Andrew Wyeth's neighbor up in Maine, way up in the northeast of the United States. And she had had polio as a child, and so she couldn't walk, and so she crawled everywhere. And so what you see here is Christina crawling home. She had crawled out into the field to be out in the sun and in the fresh air, and now she's crawling back home. So for Americans, this is an incredibly moving image. For you guys, you go, it's a girl in a field. Now that I've kind of explained it to you, you probably appreciate it a little more, okay? But it wasn't like you saw this, you go, I really like it. Now you have the backstory, you probably like it a little bit more, okay? And that's how familiarity works, okay? Once you're exposed to something a lot and you understand it, you start to like things, okay? Conversely, here's something that many of you are probably quite familiar with, okay? Up until a week ago, I'd never seen this picture before, but this, I am told, is a pretty famous painting over in India, okay? It's Hussein's Three Horses painting, okay? And when many of you saw this, you kind of smiled and you go, oh, I know that. I like this painting. And in fact, frankly, I like it too. I think it's classic abstract art. But it's all about familiarity, okay? If you like something, it's because you're familiar with it. Not necessarily that it's good. Is this a good painting? Okay. Is this previous one a good painting? It really doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is your familiarity with it. Okay. That's what we mean by familiar. If you're familiar with something, you tend to like it. If you're not familiar with something, you might like it, you might dislike it, okay, but it doesn't move you in any way. All right. So what is it, okay, about familiarity that makes us like things, okay? And this gets to the topic of fluency, okay? Is that you like the familiar because it doesn't require any thinking. You know, I spent 5 minutes discussing Christina's world to you, and now you understand it a little bit and you like it a little bit, even though it may be the first time you've seen Wyeth's painting, okay? Because, okay, you have a little understanding of it now. When I see it, I just love it, and I don't even have to think about why do I love this, because I know the backstory. Okay, this is what we mean by fluency. Okay, we enjoy things that require minimal thinking, and things that we're familiar with doesn't require any brain power. Okay, so if it's easy to think about or requires no thinking, we refer to that as fluency. And of course, when we say you're fluent in a language, okay, what are we saying? We're saying that you don't have to think when you're talking. I'm not sitting here planning out what I'm going to say. I just say it, and it's like magic. Somehow the right words come out, and what I'm saying hopefully makes sense to all of you out there, but I'm not planning it out. Okay, the words are just coming out. I'm telling you this story. All right, another area would be comfort foods. Okay, it's another type of fluency. When you're not feeling well, almost everybody reverts to a comfort food, that food that, you know, it takes no thinking to prepare it. It takes no thinking to eat it. You know you'd love it, and it's going to make you feel better, even if it has no health benefits. Just eating this food from your childhood just makes you feel better. Okay, so comfort foods are a type of fluency. Language, your native language, is a type of fluency. Anything we're familiar with requires minimum brain power, minimum thinking, and we're fluent in it. Okay, so needless to say, if we have fluency, okay, we must have the opposite. Okay, what do we call it when something is hard to think about? Okay, how do we respond when it's hard to think about something? All right, and what we do, just like eating our comfort foods makes us feel better. All right, in the same way, if something is hard to think about, we transfer that difficulty we're having in our brain to discomfort about the object itself. Okay, the object itself, of course, is not creating any pain, any discomfort, but we're transferring the discomfort onto that object because we have to use our brain power to think about it. So let's look at another painting. Here's another classic American painting. It must be a really good painting. Okay, this is a Jackson Pollock from the 1950s, another abstract expressionism painting, and it must be a really good painting because it recently sold for 140 million US dollars. But I'll tell you, I look at this and I struggle. I don't know what you're thinking while you're looking at this. I'm thinking, what is this? Okay, what does it mean? What is the artist trying to express? What is he trying to tell me? What am I supposed to be experiencing here? You know, I kind of focus on the yellow lines, or maybe I switch and focus on the white lines. I just have no idea what is going on in this painting. Okay, so do I like this painting? I have no idea if I like this painting. I can't say as I like the painting. Do I dislike it? I'm not sure as I dislike it. I mean, it looks like it took a tremendous amount of effort to create it. All right, but I'm just so struggling to understand this painting, and I'm guessing unless some of you are abstract artists and you get it, if and you do get it, please explain it to me. Okay, but my guess is you're all doing what I'm doing. You're staring at this and you go, what is going on here? All right, and so we transfer that discomfort to the painting, and you go, you know, I don't think I like this painting. All right, so it has nothing to do with a painting. Okay, so it has to do with the difficulty we're having understanding it. All right, this is what we call disfluency. Okay, thinking that is hard is disfluency. Okay, when information is costly, we say we're disfluent. It takes effort to learn something new. It would take a lot of effort, okay, and a lot of study to understand Jackson Pollock's work. And I have never put that effort in, okay? And this happens regularly, okay? And there's times when we should put the effort in, okay? This probably happens to you all the time. You cross paths with a new word, okay? What do when you experience a new word, okay? Do you look the word up? Do you practice using that word? Okay, you just heard my name, McLeod. All right, you go, that's a weird name. All right, what is McLeod? Do you think, what does McLeod mean? All right, do you think that way? And that's a good way to think. We want you thinking that way. McLeod's actually a Scottish Gaelic term. Mac means son of, and loud actually means ugly. Okay, so my name means son of ugly. And now you know that, okay? And you know how to pronounce it. It's McLeod. All right, so when you learn new words, you want to do this. When I'm teaching students about disfluency, I always teach them a new word. One word I love to use because it's used everywhere and people ignore it, but it's a very useful word, is the word ubiquitous. Okay, I don't know how many of you know the word ubiquitous. All right, but if you don't know it, look it up and start using it. Okay, and you're going to find it's a really useful word. All right, and that's what you want to do with new words. We talked about unusual names. When you meet somebody, they have an unusual name, just keep repeating the name multiple times until you're comfortable with the pronunciation, and then you'll remember that person's name. Okay, we need, okay, to practice with things we're disfluent with. All right, it just can't be that you focus on all the things you're familiar with, that you're fluent about. Okay, you need to develop new familiarities. And how do we do that? Mere exposure. Remember Zajanc. Okay, if you just keep exposing yourself to new things, you will come to like those things. It's pretty amazing, okay? So, at any rate, that's what you want to do as an innovator, okay? Most people don't want to spend the time learning new things. You, as an innovator, need to spend time learning new things, many new things, and you'll learn to like new things simply by exposing yourself to them, okay? It's very important to remember that. Mere exposure effect, very, very important concept. Okay, so, but we're focused on customer value. How are your customers thinking? Well, your customers, of course, want easy. They want the familiar. Okay, they don't want to think about something. Okay, on the other hand, people get bored pretty easily. So while they like easy thinking, they also like being surprised. They like being challenged. They like to be forced to think a little bit. Okay, so this is your challenge. Okay, this is the fluency disfluency trade-off, and this is the world that innovators, entrepreneurs work in all the time. This is the world you want to be working in. You want to be sitting there at the cusp of fluency and disfluency. You don't want to give people what they want, and you don't want to give people only what they're unfamiliar with. They're going to reject both. But if you can work right at that cusp of fluency and disfluency, you can make people very happy. You can create tremendous user value. Okay, so people are conservative, they want the familiar, but they're also curious. Okay, they hunger for new things. All right, and so how do you deal with this? Okay, how do you make something new and different, which is your goal, recognizing that your customer wants something they already know and recognize? All right, and the trick here is you need to surprise your potential customer with familiarity. All right, this is the game. It's really important. Look at this map. You guys recognize this map? And for a second you go, what the heck is this? And then after a few seconds you smiled and you go, oh, I know what this is. But my guess is most of you have never seen this map before. Of course, this is a world map that they use to teach Australian children about the world, the geography of the world. All right. In the US, of course, when we're teaching our students, we put the US way up here, front and center. Okay, and then US is here, Europe is right here, and everything else is off to the periphery somewhere, because Americans know that the US and Europe are the center of the universe. Okay, but of course, if you're an Australian child, Australia is the center of the universe. Okay, I don't know what kind of maps you guys use in India. My guess is you probably use a version of the English map, okay, because I know England played a big role over the last couple hundred years in the development of India. I personally love this map. When we're teaching our students that the world is 3/4 water, and then we show them the map, it looks like it's less than half water. And the students go, no, it's not. It's less than half water. You look at this map and you go, oh my God, the planet is mostly water. Okay. You say Siberia has 13 time zones. Can you believe this? 13 time zones in Siberia. And you look at the map we teach from, they go, no, it's not 13 time zones. You look at this map and you go, oh my goodness. Okay, it spans more than half the globe. All right. And you see the US is actually a pretty obscure little country over here in the corner. All right. So I like this map. It puts things in perspective. And of course, as a Canadian, I love this map because you go, oh my gosh, look at the size of Canada. Right. So at any rate, the point is, you first saw it and you go, I don't understand this. And then all of a sudden you did understand it. All right. And you smiled. Okay. I surprised you with the familiar. And all I did is I just flipped the map over. Not a big deal. Wasn't some breakthrough science here. All right. I just took the familiar and I flipped it over. This is surprising with familiarity. Okay. This is the nature of innovation. Innovation are just simple combinations of what already exists. I took a world map, I flipped it over. It was a simple combination. Okay. This is what you want to do to innovate, to find this convergence between fluency and disfluency. Okay. To surprise with familiar, frame your new ideas as simple modifications or combinations of old ideas. People like a lot of fluency, but they need a little disfluency. So I didn't change anything on that map. It is a world map. It's an accurate world map. We just flipped it over. Okay. And after a bit of a surprise, people saw the familiar, and then you were all comfortable with this. I'm comfortable with this map. I get it. I know where all the relationships here. Okay. So the important thing for you, okay, is that you look for modifications of old ideas. You look for a combination of ideas. Okay. Not necessarily that you like. All right. I don't think I like the Jackson Pollock painting, and yet people really love it. Somebody paid $140 million for that painting. So it doesn't matter what I like. What matters is what your customer like. That's very important. You don't want to fall into this trap, what we call a cognitive bias, called projection bias. Okay, projection bias is starting to think that what I like, okay, and what everybody else likes, and what I dislike, everybody else dislikes. That's absolutely not the case. Never fall into that trap. It doesn't matter, okay, what you like, what you dislike. The only thing that matters is what your potential customer likes or dislikes, okay? So you're not going to find successful convergences, okay, if you're constrained by projection bias, by your own belief biases. It's really important that you be willing to try out a wide variety of things that your customer might like. You really have to do the experiments. Don't trust yourself. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust the gut feelings of your team. Try things out. Do the experiments. This is what makes for great innovations. All right. People who don't decide a priori what the customer is going to like. It's very important. Here's just some simple examples. This is from the world of food. I went online and gone to Google and said, so what are some weird but popular food combinations? Okay, I don't know if India people eat peanut butter, really popular snack food. In the United States, it's a spread made of peanuts, of course. Sriracha, hot sauce and peanut butter, came in at the top of the list, amazingly enough. Who would imagine? Okay, putting hot sauce on peanut butter, but it's incredibly popular. Strawberry and basil, goat milk and caramel, mango and chili, another really strange one. Cheetos is a snack food, okay, really garbage snack food, but apparently broccoli and Cheetos is popular. Putting salt in your chocolate milk seems very strange. Another hot sauce, cauliflower and hot sauce, who would think? I don't know if you guys have M&Ms. It's a candy, very popular candy, chocolate covered, chocolate candy with a hard shell covering on it. M&M pizzas, bourbon, okay, and pickle juice. Bourbon is a corn whiskey that's very popular in the south of the United States. It's a little too sweet for me because I'm a Scotch drinker, but I can't imagine putting pickle juice into bourbon, but it's incredibly popular apparently. All right, so peanut butter and bacon. Bacon makes everything taste better, so I can believe peanut butter and bacon. Okay, but you get the idea. Okay, looking at this list, I have no idea. If I was trying to, if my job, I was working for a food company and my job was to come up with a new snack food, would I have tried any of these things? Okay, and probably not. All right, so I'm not working in the food world, but if you're working in the food world, this is exactly what you want to do. You want to put disparate combinations together, and don't say, oh God, I don't think I'd like that. We don't care. Do other people like it? That's the important thing. All right, so disparate combinations really important. Here on the artistic side, okay, nothing surprising here. Okay, the combination is kind of fun. If I showed you a tube of toothpaste, okay, none of you would have smiled. If I showed you a picture of a snail, none of you would have smiled. You go, that's a snail. That's a tube of toothpaste. What's the big deal? But seeing a snail come out of a toothpaste tube, I bet a lot of you smiled when you saw this picture. Okay, you all know cauliflower, I presume. You all know sheep, okay? But, and neither of those, a picture of a sheep, a picture of cauliflower is not going to make you laugh. But putting the head of a sheep on cauliflower, you go, wow, that really looks like a sheep. Okay, and you kind of laugh to yourself. Same with, you know what snakes are, you know what a garden hose is, all right? But the idea of thinking of a garden hose as a snake is a cute idea, and it probably made you smile. And each of these do that. I don't know if you have Jello in India. It's a collagen-based, sugary treat that we give to kids for a dessert. I'm sure you have goldfish, but you never think of these two things in combination, and that combination makes you smile. I think you do have McDonald's there, and you know French fries, okay, and you know crayons. Okay, a picture of crayons wouldn't have made you smile. A picture of, French fries from McDonald's wouldn't have made you smile. But a picture of a French fry holder with yellow crayons in it probably makes you smile. Okay, I don't know if you have bowling in India, okay, and you know bowling balls, 10-pin bowling, all right, and you certainly have watermelon, but the idea of using a watermelon as a bowling ball, okay, probably makes you smile. This is the idea. You want people to smile. You want people to laugh out loud. How do you know people are surprised? How do you know that you've effectively captured that fluency-disfluency combination? People will smile when you explain it to them. People will laugh out loud. Okay, people might say, that's impossible. But of course, if you're doing it, clearly it's not impossible. That's what you're looking for. You're trying to surprise with familiarity. You're familiar with all of these objects. What you weren't familiar with is the combination. It's a combination that made you smile or perhaps even laugh out loud when you saw these. Okay, so this is what you're trying to do as an innovator. Okay, you're trying to find, okay, this combination, successful convergences. Okay, we call this the magic. All right, if you pitch an idea to someone, if you show them a image like we just looked at, and they smile, they laugh out loud, okay, you've created magic. Okay, it's really important, and you can't guess ahead of time, okay, what combination is going to work. You really have to run the experiment. Okay, does it actually surprise people in the real world? Don't think, I think this will surprise people. Okay, it doesn't matter what you think, all right, because you're too biased about your own values, your own culture, your own life experiences, all right? You have to show it to people, okay, and then do they gasp? Do they laugh? Do they smile? Do they say it's impossible? You're getting those kind of responses, you know you're on target. It's really important. Innovation, therefore, is a lot like science, okay? You start an experiment, you don't know what's going to happen, okay? And then you run the experiment, and something's going to happen, okay? You're going to get a surprising result, or you're not going to get a surprising result, all right? So it's all about experimentation. You can't innovate sitting in an office, sitting in a laboratory. Innovation's all about interacting with your customer, all right? Very important, all right? Where does this magic come from? Okay, how do you think this up? Well, it's clearly an artist, a very creative artist, created all those images we just looked at. And you might say to yourself, well, can I create something like that? Can I come up with these disparate convergences of some sort? And the answer is yes, you can. Okay, so there's things you know, okay, that nobody else knows. That is to say, you are the only person that has lived the life you live, okay? And as a result of the life you have lived, okay, you know things or believe things that few other people know or believe, okay? And here's one of the first references I want to talk about, a very important one for young people who are thinking about entrepreneurship and innovation, is Thiel and Masters' 2014 book, 0 to 1. It's a very short read. I think it's free online. And I encourage you to read it. In fact, I encourage young people, everybody in their 20s, to read it every year of their life. So Peter Thiel calls this your secret, something you know or you believe that other people, okay, don't know about, or they just don't think about it in some way. Okay, if you can embed your secrets, okay, into your innovation, you can create combinations around your secret. Okay, you have a very good chance of being successful. And you don't have one secret, you have lots of life experiences, okay? You have more than enough life experiences, and this is why you don't have to be an inventor, all right? And create something brand new, never seen before. And in fact, if you create something brand new, never seen before, people are not gonna like it because they don't like brand new. Remember that, they like the familiar. So can you take the familiar and create combinations that are going to get people excited? And the answer is yes, and it's remarkably easy. Okay, let's say, for example, that over the course of your life, okay, you've had one or two interesting, let's say, since you were a teenager, you know, a couple of interesting experiences a year. So far, maybe you've had 30 interesting experiences. Okay, so we're going to combine, we're going to do combinations of these things. Let's say we're going to combine them in groups of 3. If you combine 30 things into groups of 3, how many combinations can you create? You probably remember this from when you took algebra, you know, counting combinations. All right, 30 items grouped into groups of 3 create over 4,000 potential combinations. All right, 4,000. You alone, with just 30 events, experiences in your life, okay, grouping them into combinations of 3, you are capable yourself of creating 4,000 innovations. But again, we tend not to work as individuals when we're innovating. We tend to work on a team. So let's say we have a team of 3 or 4 people, okay? And each of those are drawing on their personal experiences, and as a team, you're trying to create combinations. Well, let's say there's some overlap, so each of the 4 people has only 25 unique experiences. And we do the same thing. We have 100 unique experiences we can work with now, okay? And we're going to put them into combinations of 3. What does that mean? Your team of 4 people, if they have pretty unique life experiences, all right, can create 160,000 innovations. This is why there's absolutely no reason for you to invent anything. Invention's not necessary to innovate. Okay, a team of 3 or 4 people can come up with literally hundreds of thousands of innovations, providing the team has relatively unique life experiences. Okay, so you don't want a lot of overlap in your life experiences. You want people from different regions of the country. You want men, you want women, you want people from different religious groups. You want, you know, how do you put 4 people together on a team, okay, to create the maximum number of innovations? As was pointed out in my introduction, I'm a bioengineer by training. Okay. On a team, do I want a team of 4 bioengineers? Absolutely not. Okay. I'm a bioengineer, so maybe I want a psychologist, and maybe I want an artist, and maybe I want a mathematician. Who knows? Okay. But you want people with different academic experiences, different life experiences, as different as possible, with the same goal. You're all trying to move in the same direction, but you want to all be approaching it from different perspectives. And that's what's going to allow you to create hundreds of thousands of innovations. All right. And then you just start testing them. You create all these innovations, you screen them out, say, you know, which are the most exciting, which ones surprised us the most. You take those out into the field, you test them, and that's the game of innovation. All right. So that's what you're trying to do, which brings up the question of, well, who are we trying to do this for? All right. And the most important answer to that question is you're not trying to do it for everybody. Don't ever try designing, innovating for everybody. It's just so frustrating. In fact, it's impossible. All you're going to do is make everybody unhappy. All right. Well, instead, what you want to do is identify the potential, what we call early adopters, those people who you can have the biggest impact on their lives. That's who you want to innovate for. Okay. How do you find them? All right. And the way we find them, okay, is by responding or innovating in response to change. Okay, and this gets us to our second reference, which is a very famous, a classic book on innovation that goes back into the 1980s, long before you were born. Okay, by Peter Drucker. It's called Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Okay, I don't know if this book is free online, but I think it's $1 on Amazon. Okay, I encourage you to buy Drucker's book, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and he lays out how do you find the people that you're going to be innovating for. That's the theme of his book. Okay, it's very important. Of course, we're talking about people who are in pain. Okay, why would somebody be in pain? And the answer is because the world has changed. Okay, and people don't like change, right? They like the familiar. Okay, when the world changes, it could have changed for the better. In fact, in general, the world changes for the better. Okay, but now it is different. Okay, and difference causes pain. All right. And so when you're looking for people in pain, okay, and we want to treat their pain, you preferably want somebody who is in deep pain, okay, and even more so, that pain is new. Okay, if 10 years ago they developed this deep pain, they are stuck in however they're treating that pain. They could be ignoring the pain. They could come up with some therapy thing. They're living in deep pain. Okay, if we go back and you think about the life of your grandparents or your great-grandparents, and you say to yourself, I am sure I would not want to live that life, that doesn't mean that your grandparents were miserable. They were very happy people. Okay, you would be miserable going back and living that life, but they were not in pain. They had adapted to that lifestyle. This is the life we live here in our community. And your grandchildren are going to look at your life and say, shake their head and say, I can't believe my grandparents lived that life. Okay, but you're not in pain. Okay, you've adapted to your life. All right. However, if the world changes, okay, people sense that change and now they get frightened and now they're in pain. All right. And so you want to find those people who are very recently put into pain, and you want to treat that pain. So it is change that creates pain. And it is the pain that creates the opportunity. So the phrase we use, the phrase that Drucker made famous, is change is opportunity. If you want to find people in pain, look for where change has occurred and who has been affected by that change. Okay, that's the important thing. So Drucker goes on and breaks the sources of change down into 4 big categories. Okay, that either a market or an industry has changed, okay, in a profound way. The demographics of society have changed in some way. That perception of the population or subpopulation has changed in some way, or new knowledge has been created. I mean, we're going to go through all four of these, and in order, because Drucker points out that this order is critical. This order is from the easiest change to pursue to the most difficult change to pursue. So this is market changes are the easiest, then demographic change, then perceptual change, and finally, trying to innovate around new knowledge is hands down the most difficult. So let's go through each of these 4. Okay. Industry market change. Clearly, okay, what we're doing right now is indicative of the fact, okay, that the world of education has changed. 10 years ago, the only way you'd be listening to me is that I got on an airplane and I flew over to India, okay, and I was standing in a lecture hall and you were all sitting there in a classroom and you were all sitting there listening to me. Okay, that's how this conversation would be happening. And that clearly is not what's going on, all right? In this new world of the internet and features like Google Meet and Zoom, et cetera, we can now educate in a whole new way, okay? And so, at least over here in the States, what are we seeing? We're seeing all sorts of new companies, Coursera, University of Phoenix, Udemy, edX, Khan Academy, responding to this change. There's a whole new way to educate, okay? And so if there's a whole new way to educate, do we really need to be building universities? Now, how do the established universities think about this? Of course, they go, well, we want the students to come on campus, all right? We need to fill these classrooms. We need to fill the lecture halls. We need to fill the laboratories with bodies, okay? The industry, okay, hasn't changed, all right? The market has very much changed, all right? So will the industry change? My guess is very much so. In fact, Dr. Tasani and I are actually working on, how do we change Binghamton University to adjust to the new markets that are developing in the presence of the internet. Now, the internet's been around for 30 years, but it didn't matter, okay? It didn't really matter until COVID came along, all right? And so there's this huge change called COVID, okay? And we could panic about COVID, or we can say, and I hope you would all say this must be an opportunity. Change is opportunity. COVID has created this amazing opportunity in the world of education and faculty in the whole business world, okay? So change is opportunity, and this is industry change, okay? So as pointed out, of course, if you're running a university with all these physical facilities, okay, you're in a bit of a panic, all right? But if you're an outsider, this is just an enormous opportunity, and this is typical whenever there's industry market change. Insiders see it as a threat, outsiders see it as an amazing opportunity, okay? So what are the indicators that big change has happened? A market is growing rapidly, all right? The industry size has doubled, okay? Once an industry doubles, the way the industry is set up, the infrastructure of the industry, you can't handle the doubling, okay? Whenever something doubles, that's too big for the existing industry to handle, and we got to do something new. It's not we can just scale up to handle doubling. Convergence of technologies, and of course, this is what, when we're talking about education, this is exactly what happened, right? That we would use the internet, to collect, faculty would use the internet to collect information, images, graphics, data that we'd use in our lectures. But our lectures up until last year were standard lectures. They were chalk talks, they were PowerPoint presentations, and all of a sudden, now we're all teaching the way I'm teaching today. We're teaching using the internet, not just as a resource for collecting data, but as outreach. So there's this new convergence that existed. If we had COVID 5 years ago, there wasn't Google Meet, there wasn't Zoom, there wasn't, WebEx, there wasn't none. I don't know what we would have done. Okay, but with COVID happening in 2020, everybody within weeks was able to convert over to a whole new way of teaching. So there's been a convergence of technology in the industry, and this is going to transform, okay, the industry of education. The insiders aren't going to like it. They're going to push back, but it is going to happen. Trust me. It's going to happen in the United States. It's going to happen in India. It's going to happen across the world. Business patterns changing rapidly is also a nice way of creating a nice example that change has happened within an industry. So you see any of these four things happening, okay, huge opportunity. These are big changes, huge opportunities that you can pursue. This is one of my favorites, demographic change. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the word demographic in the world of healthcare. We use it all the time, but it really refers to the size of a population, the age structure of a population, gender distribution, education, racial composition, employment, income distribution, marital distribution, any way to describe a population of human beings. That's what we mean by demographic, all right? If one of these changes substantially, it creates great opportunity for innovation, all right? So let me just look at one of these. just the kind of the age distribution of a population. Okay, so this is the birth rate among Americans, okay, over the last 100 years or so. Okay, so you go back to the agrarian era, and people had lots of babies because they needed them to work on the farms. And then kind of after World War I or so, going into World War I, we started industrializing, and you didn't need all those people on the farms. Everybody moved into the cities. And in fact, you didn't even want a lot of children because it became very expensive to have children in the cities. And, you know, but birth rates kind of bottomed out. And then, of course, along came World War II, and we have what we call in the United States, and I think through much of the world, the baby boom. Okay, Americans started getting very wealthy, and now even living in the cities, you could afford to have more children, and our birth rate just kind of took off. Okay, and then the world changed profoundly. Basically, what happened is the development of birth control. Okay, and women said, you know, frankly, I don't want to stay home and raise kids. I'd like to be a professional. I'd like to be a doctor. I'd like to be a lawyer. I'd like to be an educator, whatever the case may be. And they quit having babies in droves, and the birth rate plummeted and plummeted and plummeted, and it continued to go down and down and down. And at this point here, we have about 1.8 births per woman of childbearing age. Okay, in the United States, you might recall that the replacement rate is 2.1 births per woman on average, okay, to keep the population steady. So the United States is well below that number, okay. As a group, as a country, we're shrinking in terms of domestic births. Now, we have a reasonably large influx of immigrants into the country, and that keeps us from absolutely shrinking, but basically it just keeps us from shrinking. We're not growing as a country, okay. And that's having a huge impact on our economy, because economies have to grow in population. Countries have to grow in population for economies to grow. I think this is an incredibly interesting, exciting fact for all of you over there in India, that India is down to basically the replacement rate. Okay, India as a country also is not growing in population. And many of your states over there are in fact starting to shrink. And this is what you're going to see throughout your career, is India shrinking in population. Okay. That's a whole different world than you were brought up in, where everybody was concerned about the overpopulation of India and food supply issues and transportation issues, and you name it. You're going to be in your career facing a very different world moving forward. This is the beauty of demographics, all right? You can see way ahead of time. You look at this number, okay, and I can tell you right now, and I've never been to India, that India is going to be facing a very different economy going forward than it has in the past, okay? Same thing here in the United States. Okay, all these babies being born, what does that mean? Okay, it means in the 1960s, you better be building a lot of schools, all right? And then what happens? Well, 20 years later, you don't have a lot of babies, okay, because the birth rate has fallen dramatically 20 years later. This is 1960, so we go here to 1980. No babies are being born. What do you have, though? All these babies are now teenagers. Okay, and the economy is dominated by teenagers, and people go, what happened? We were, a few years ago, we were focused on building schools and, baby clothing and cribs and all that baby stuff. Now, you want us to focus on teenagers. And sure enough, 20 years later, okay, all these teenagers were having families, okay, they were 40 somethings. People go, wait a second, we were focused on teenagers just a few years ago. Now you want us to focus on 40 somethings, and you go up 20 years later, all of these babies are now retirees, okay? They're 65 or older, okay? They want to do all the things that retirees do, okay? And so you knew this 60 years ago. You knew that all these babies were going to become retirees. How many people actually planned for that? And the answer is remarkably few. So you have these ridiculously long lead times, and yet people continually think, oh my gosh, where did this demographic come from? The demographics are supposed to change slowly, but you know exactly how long it takes for demographics to change. So they appear to occur suddenly, but you have lots of forewarning, okay? So, but the bottom line is decision makers tend to be old. They're out of touch. They remember what they were doing 20 years ago. Oh, 20 years ago, the market was all focused on teenagers. It was rock and roll music, and, it was blue jeans, and it was this, and it was that. And they don't see that those 20-year-olds have become 40-year-olds and are no longer in the market, and a whole new group of Gen Xers are there. So decision makers tend to be out of the loop when it comes to demographic change, and that creates huge opportunities for young people who can see what is happening. Okay, and these are what we call black swan events. And so here's another reference you might think about taking a look at. Nassim Taleb's Black Swan, okay, the impact of the highly improbable. It's a great book, and these black swan events just open up these possibilities that you're going to be left, people are going to think you're crazy if you're chasing these opportunities. And that's exactly what you want to do. You want to be left all alone so you can chase the opportunity that you've identified. Okay, changes in perception. Very simple. Nothing in the world has changed, but people's perspective of the world has changed. And again, a couple of nice books by Malcolm Gladwell that talk about this, The Tipping Point and Outliers, that what happens? I mean, we all thought this, and now we're all thinking something else. How does that happen? And there's no way to explain it. Okay, it happened. All right, and it can go very, very quickly. All right, so the recent perceptual change. Here in the United States, we're just talking about retirement. People think, well, 65, that's retirement age. Well, the 65 retirement age was established in 1930. Okay, here we are, 90 years later, and we still think of 65 as a retirement age. Now, when the retirement age of 65 was established in 1930, the life expectancy of Americans was 63. Okay, so it was set because they expected most people to never get to retirement age, but they have never changed it. Now the life expectancy for people my age is high 80s, 87, I think is what we're at this point. For you guys are going to live to the age 100. Okay, so if you come out of school and get a job and you work for 30 or 40 years and you retire, you're going to be retired for 40 years. You're going to be retired longer than you worked. In fact, a lot of Americans are in this situation now that took retirement early, 55 or 60, and now they've been doing nothing for 30 or 40 years. The whole world has changed. Okay, and it seems like it happened instantly. But in fact, people are starting to recognize, okay, my life isn't over at 65. And now we say in the United States, 60 is the new 40, and 80 is the new 60. So at any rate, perception, it's just a perceptual change. It's actually been happening slowly, but very abruptly, people recognize what was happening. Concern about the value of higher education, okay, is something that's rapidly occurred. Increase of number of women in the professions here in the United States. More women physicians graduate than men. There's more women in law school than there are men in law school. On the flip side of that, women like to marry men who earn more money or have a higher equivalent or higher socioeconomic status than they have. Well, if you're an attorney or you're a physician, there are not too many people out there who have higher socioeconomic status. So who are they going to marry? And so here in the country, for example, our country, there's this real concern that there's all these unmarriageable men hanging out. And you might have heard about on January 6th, this kind of riot in Washington, D.C., okay, where all these angry people literally attacked the American government, Congress building. Who were they? They were basically all these unmarriageable men, young men who are just frustrated by life because life has changed, the world has changed, and they haven't changed with it. Gay marriage came out of nowhere. It went from 20% of Americans supporting gay marriage to overnight, within a couple of years, 80% of Americans. And as soon as it was 80%, the Supreme Court said gay marriage is legal. Things can change very quickly. Something we've really kind of experienced during COVID, people used to eat their meals at home, go out for entertainment. Now with all this streaming video, people tend to entertain themselves at home and go out to eat, or during COVID, basically order takeout for the whole thing. The whole entertainment food thing has been transformed almost overnight. And frankly, restaurants are in a panic, movie theaters are in a panic. It's not clear people are going to go back to this old, go to the grocery store, get food, prepare food, then go out for a movie. That's probably all over. Similarly, associated with COVID, air travel, is that ever going to come back? Cruise ship vacations, is that ever going to come back? people are probably going to be looking for different types of vacations, different type of recreational experiences post-COVID, all right? And these are just very abrupt perceptual changes, great opportunities. Okay, people are in pain. I can't air travel, what can I do? You're there, you can create something for them to do. All right, so let's, I'm going over here, aren't I? Let's just kind of wrap up with new knowledge. This, of course, is the last on Drucker's list. Exploiting new knowledge, because it's very difficult, it's very expensive, and it's very time consuming, and the risk of failure is very high. Of course, we all think of technological breakthroughs as being wonderful, very sexy, isn't this wonderful? And people want to get involved in breakthrough technologies. Okay, it's one investors love to put money into, billions into. Okay, but it's extremely difficult. For the few who are successful, it's going to lead to fame and riches. Okay, but there are a lot of hurdles. Okay, and the big one is time. Okay, and it just, from benchtop demonstration of a technology to when it's commercialized, on the median time is 25 years. The range is 15 to 40 years. So when somebody, you read an article about, here's this new technology that's been demonstrated at this university, in 3 to 5 years, we're all going to be using this. No, minimum 15 years. Okay, could be up to 45 years or more. Okay, depending on the field that it's in, but expect 25 years. If you glom onto a new technology, expect to spend most of your career taking that to commercialization. 25 years. You go on, you get a PhD. You're 30 years old. You say, this is great stuff. I'm going to work on commercializing this. You're going to see that commercialized when you're in your mid 50s or early 60s. All right, that's the time it takes. It's amazing how long it takes. And this is just some representative examples of things going back in time, just some fun ones that you might know about. Everything from kind of antibiotics up to the zipper. Most of these are all, for the most part, in the 20th century, except for photography. You go, photography, that's so cool. How could it take 60 years for photography to catch on? But it really did. Frozen food was a pretty amazing breakthrough, but of course it required that people had freezers. And so as soon as those came along, it was very effective. But you can see here, the mean time is over 30 years for this selection. This is just a random selection of technologies I pulled out. But just to reinforce, again, new technologies, it takes a long time. Why? Why does it take so long? Well, the answer is we really don't know. Historians of science argue that it really takes a generation, okay, to grow up with that technology, to see how can you use it. Because remember, everything, okay, that is accepted out there as a commercial product represents a convergence. Okay, so you have to figure out, how do I use this new technology in combination with something else? So that means you have to have some experience with the new technology. Without that experience, how do you see the convergences? So that just takes time, and typically it takes about a generation. This is a nice example I like to use about the development of computers, okay, which relied on 5 really important technologies: vacuum tube, Boolean logic, punch cards, programming, and feedback systems. These were all pretty old. Look at Boolean logic. In the 1940s, Boolean logic had been sitting around for over 100 years. Nobody knew what to do with it. What would you do with a form of mathematics that only had 0 and 1? That's stupid. Well, 100 years later, somebody said, wait a second, we have this system that is just built on 0 and 1s. Okay, vacuum tubes can be on and off, on or off. And here's a way we can make use of that. Vacuum tubes themselves are 25 years old. Punch cards were used, interestingly enough, originally in the garment industry to control the pattern on looms. And then Hollerith translated that technology into a way of count for the Census Bureau to be able to quickly do a census, to handle surveys, basically. And they'd been doing that for about 60 years. So they had a lot of experience with punch cards, punch card readers. Babbage had created the first mechanical computer 50 years before. So this is very typical. It takes a very long time for people, you have to understand the technology well enough, okay, to be able to see how you can combine it all together. Okay, so let's just kind of wrap this up. The important thing to remember is that if you're going to innovate successfully, what you have to do is you create value, all right? And value is about creating a combination of existing technologies that sit at this cusp of fluency and disfluency, okay? It's important that you don't try to create value for everybody. Create value for people, that small set of people who are in deep pain. They're in deep pain because change has occurred in their life. It is change that creates pain. And so it is change that creates opportunity. Focus on that group, that subset that has been most impacted by the change that has recently occurred. Focus on them and create incredible value for that small group. And over time, you can scale it up, and this will become successful commercially. The last take home I want to leave with you is that you can't just sit down and start practicing putting combinations together. You want to practice this, okay? That is to say, when you have to do it, is not the time to learn how to do this, okay? So it's like school, right? We give you homework sets so that you get some practice using the concepts that we talk about. So in the same way, I would encourage you to start practicing what we're talking about here today. Practice paying attention to change. Where has change occurred in my life, in my community, in my society? All right. Don't worry about why the change occurred. You know, we have other people that worry about those kind of things. We have politicians and sociologists and psychologists, all these things. You don't have to worry about that. You're an engineer. You have to create the future. Okay. The future is a result of the change that has already occurred. Pay attention to those changes and see, you know, ask yourself, who has this change most impacted? Those are the people you can design for. Okay, you can talk to those people. How has this change affected you in some way? And then correspondingly, they can say, oh, it's created this terrible pain for me. Then you can start practicing, how can I address this pain? What kind of combination of things that I already know exist could I put together, okay, that might effectively treat this pain? And so practicing putting disparate things together that you can pitch to people and just constantly pitch to people. Well, what if we could do that? And they'll go, oh, you can't do that. Yeah, but what if we could do that? And they'll go, oh, that'd be amazing if we could do that, all right? That's the response you're looking for. You know, you don't want people to say, that's nice. That sounds like a good idea. They say it's a good idea, it's an obvious idea. And an obvious idea is a bad idea. You want people to say, that would be amazing. That would be transformative. That would change my life. Those are the ideas that you're looking for. And you'll get there through practice. All right, practice, practice, practice. Okay, so I'm probably overwhelming you with all these concepts, all right? But just keep in mind, as Winston Churchill said many years ago, a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, but an optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty, every challenge. So this seems a bit challenging, okay, but if you learn to recognize change and you learn to create disparate combinations that sit at that cusp of fluency and disfluency, you can be an incredibly successful innovator. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, just turn on your microphone, or there might be a chat feature in Google Meet. I don't know it well, but
yeah, thank you, Dr. McLeod. Excellent talk as always. What questions does the audience have? I do see a raise the hand feature here, Ken. So maybe when a hand goes up, we can open up mics.
Okay. How do you, oh, there was a question there. Oh, how do I get back to that question?
Vaishab has a question. How to find customers in particular niche and build trust with them? That's the question.
How
do you find a niche customer, Ken, and build trust with that customer set?
So so you find the particular niche by looking for the change. Who's in pain? And, you know, frankly, what I tell my students is look for pain, but also look for reasonably deep pockets. Frankly, I say look for middle-aged women, because in the United States, at least, women control the money in a family. young people very rarely have money, so even if they want something, they can't afford to buy it. And men just generally don't buy anything. You know, I go to a store twice a year. So women, middle-aged women, are a good target. But look for people who are in deep pain. You know, deep pain and deep pockets is a very good niche to look for. But you want people to identify those people where the change that has occurred in society has had a profound effect on them. You know, let's go back to the education example we were talking about. You know, the United States educational structure is really geared to young people. Colleges focus on 17 to 21-year-olds. And if instead you have to go to work and start working for a living and you're raising a family, it's very hard to get a college degree. And so we have more than 2/3, maybe 70% of our nation does not have a college degree. And we don't focus on that group because they're working from 9 to 5. That's when college runs. But in this new world with this new technological change, there's nothing to prevent us from doing what we're doing right now. It's 8:30 at night, 9:30 at night over there in India, and you're listening to me talk. And if you could have been working all day for all I know, and now it's evening and it's after dinner and you have time to listen to me give a lecture. Same thing is here in the United States. There's this enormous market that is literally 5 times larger than the college market that we could be focused on, and we tend not to focus on them historically because it was logistically difficult. Now it's logistically pretty straightforward. And so there's this, I don't even want to call it a niche market because it's such an enormous market, but there is this huge demand for college degrees, and we now have a way of delivering that. So look for the pain, and look for the ability for people to, you know, pay for a new product, because when new products first come out, they tend to be more expensive than alternative treatments. But if it's 10x better, people will pay that extra. I hope that helps. Does that help? So the trust part comes from credibility, of course. Is it going to work? Is it worth paying all this extra? Okay, that I'm paying for what you're telling me is 10x better. You know, is there any evidence it's 10x better? And if you have evidence it really is 10x better, you're going to recruit a fair number of people onto your side. It's a very good question. Okay. Which type of country would incubate a startup to really grow and thrive? A country with a developed economy like the US, or a country with a developing economy like India? I would say a developing country. When the United States was still developing, 1 in 9 Americans were interested in launching a new venture. Okay, and over the last 50 years, you know, going back 50, 60 years ago, you go back to the 1960s, every young person was interested in launching a new venture, had an idea for the future. The future is going to be so bright. And now that's gone. You know, young people want to get a job. We've lost something there. And it's really sad. And as a result, our economy is not growing. You know, our economic growth is like 1%. It's abysmal. Meanwhile, China is booming, India is booming. So given the choice, I would prefer to be in a developing country. Okay, you've spoken about the need for experiments, but how do we work on something which our mind doesn't like? Well, again, the trick is to like the outcome, okay? It doesn't matter if you like it. I mean, I work in the world of healthcare, and in general, I don't have any of the health conditions that I'm working on. So I have no interest in using the products I develop. But, you know, we're working on a product to prevent dementia. I don't have dementia. I mean, maybe someday I'll be worried about it. But imagine if we could eliminate Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other forms of dementia. I mean, just wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't you love to do that? And so it is the outcome. It's what you do. If you're an innovator, you want to change the world, okay? And if you change the world, you'll be rewarded, okay? But it doesn't mean changing your world, okay? Your world could be perfectly fine. My world, I'm perfectly happy in my world, okay? I love innovation. I love teaching engineering. You know, I'm not trying to change my world. I'm trying to change the world of all those 70 and 80-year-olds who, you know, are struggling to remember their children's names, and, you know, can no longer drive a car, and, you know, their quality of life is just decaying. If I can have that impact on them, I'm going to feel very good. So yeah, it doesn't matter. You don't do something for yourself. In terms of the product, the thing that you're doing, of course, is transforming the world. That's where your reward comes in. Good question, though. Any other thoughts, questions out there? Okay. Nope, that was a thank you. I think we have a few more minutes, or do we want to return to you, Mike, and you can kind of wrap up your introductory comments or make them closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. McLeod. Again, excellent talk. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the participants from Don Bosco College of Engineering. Thank you so much for joining this particular webinar. Look for more in the future, for sure. We'd love to continue this. And I want to thank our organizers. So Dr. Avila, thank you. Principal, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. Would you all like to say anything in closing?
Yeah, Mr. Roland wants to say something. Mr. Roland?
Yes. Thank you, Doctor, for having such a great session with us. I thank you on the behalf of our college and all the students here. I also thank for all the students for attentively listening, and we had such good questions being asked. And I thank the teachers too, who were in charge of conducting this webinar. Yes, thank you.
Very good. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Kenneth, for a wonderful session on creating customer value. It was indeed very interesting. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. And thank you, Tesnani, for being with us today. Thank you. Have a nice day.
You as well. Have a great evening. Thank you, and thank you, Dr. McLeod.
You're more than welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Have a good day.
Yes, you too have a good day. And Professor Testani, thank you very much. You're always there for us. I know you are, again, with the conference team. And thank you once again for this session with us. And both of you have a lovely day there in US.
You have a great evening, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Yes, thank you.